shock. I don't know how many times we have to be back in this story. There are many stories, of course, just by definition of the world we live in, that come around quite regularly. But I would say that of knife crime is up there of stories that we revisit time and time again. And if you were designing this world from scratch, you might think that each time we talked about it, there'd be some progress. I'd be able to bring some new news to the table, a new initiative or something that was happening that had changed the terms of engagement, that had altered our response to it. The response of the criminal justice system, the response of our political masters, the police, etc. You might think by now, and I've been talking about it for 20 years, for goodness sake, that I would be able to initiate this debate and say, well, do you know what? Back in the day, it used to be like this. Kids walked around, they didn't really care. They got caught and that was it, and nobody wanted to do it anymore. That's never happened. Doesn't matter how many times we talk about this. It doesn't matter how grotesque and disturbing the story is. Every death, in whatever manner, is tragic. Every death of a child, essentially, a 14-year-old girl, is tragic. And when a 15-year-old girl, I beg your pardon, is tragic, when you see a story like this, you don't want to be desensitized in any kind of way. You don't want to get to that point where you go, do you know what? We see this so often. I never do. I never think, oh, here's another story. I am fully aware, and I think most people, particularly if you're a parent, will be ingesting the horror and the trauma that everybody around this young girl will be going through and will never get over. The only thing you can hope from any story such as this is resolution. And I don't just mean that the perpetrator is caught. We know that the police have been given an extra 24 hours to question a 17-year-old boy arrested over this fatal stabbing. We are yet to know fully, maybe within the next day we will, the identity of the young girl or anything more about the boy being questioned. So, but it's not just that. That in itself doesn't solve the issue that I want to live in a world where we don't have the problem to begin with, where we don't have kids who are so cavalier they are happy to walk down the streets. And this is the interesting bit. We see kids clad in balaclavas under the light of a silvery moon, walking around, concocting and cooking up plans to do bad things to people. We're aware of that. But more and more, some of these kids aren't even wearing balaclavas. And this isn't happening under the light of a silvery moon. This is happening in broad daylight. This young girl lost her life at 8:30 in the morning while going to school. That's how brazen this story is. That's how cavalier perpetrators can be. So what is behind this? What is the root cause of knife crime? Now, there's some groupthink going on here. One group of kids encourages another group of kids. There's some status in carrying a big blade. My blade's bigger than your blade. Oh, you call that no, this is a knife. It's that, there's some of that going on. The kind of gang mentality is they think there's the Sopranos, and they're not. There's a bit of that, but bearing in mind, every time we see one of these stories of a young kid getting stabbed to death, and many more, of course, getting injured in knife-related crime, the perpetrator is almost always caught within about 2 days maximum. And that's because they carried it out in front of people. Folk know who they are. They weren't really hiding their identity. They were happy to be seen and known as the kid with the machete. Machete, for goodness sake. The chosen weapon of choice for the Rwandan genocide is what people and young kids are walking the streets with in this country, and doing so and not bothered that everybody can see it or knows about it. That, in fact, adds to it. So what is the root cause of that? Because I've heard people go, well, there's not enough coppers on the street. That's not the answer. It's not. You don't become a killer because there's not enough coppers on the street. What's the other one we get? Yeah, they took away the youth clubs. Really? You honestly think that these characters would be playing ping pong or doing paper mache on a Tuesday afternoon? That would be, as a result of those youth clubs, they took to killing? Really? No. Does this start with the parents? Is it about politicians? Well, it might be a little bit, but surely the first port of call you have to look at is the upbringing of the child involved. Now, that may be a short-term answer. I'm sure the full answer is far more complex. But the idea that this is because there are fewer cops, not the right law. You need a law to tell you not to stab someone to death? Really? That's not how this story plays out. This story plays out due to a lack of any kind of template of decency, any kind of understanding of right and wrong, and any kind of even a momentary glimpse of consequences. It lacks all of that. Because going to jail, on the face of it, for some of these kids, well, that's all right, I'll go to jail. Fantastic. I'll be known as the one that used the knife and went to jail. After about 2 years, when they realise they've got another 22 to go, they're not quite so happy. 0344 499 1000.